Our first presenter tonight is Marcus Brody. And Marcus moved to Ithaca in 2014 with his wife, Rabbi Suzanne Brody, and his two children, Maytal and Hillel. He grew up in New Jersey, and he's a graduate of Colgate University, as well as University of Virginia, where he did a PhD in chemistry, and then Pepperdine University. And he's currently working as a senior product developer at the National Food Lab, which is a full-service consulting company for the food industry, and it's right up near the airport. So Marcus is going to be telling us a story that he calls The Day I Met Elijah. Take it away.
Thank you, Marjorie. Hold on, my story. So first I want to start by saying that this is an absolutely true story. So it must have been like 1993. I was in the second year of my second year as a chemistry graduate student at the University of Virginia. It was Erev Yom Kippur, and I had lost track in the lab, as I was wont to do, and it was very late. And I realized that I needed to rush out and get some food and grab a shower before the fast started, and I had to get over to shul. So I didn't have any food in my house, because I was a graduate student. I basically lived in a lab. So I went to the grocery store and grabbed a bunch of random things to eat. And I drove out of the grocery store, and I was literally like shoving stuff down my throat, trying to eat, and before the fast started. Now, at the entrance of the grocery store was a traffic light, and people would stand there and ask for money. You've probably seen these people around Ithaca, down by Walmart and on 13, and you probably see them all the time. And as I stopped at the light, and I literally had like a chicken wing hanging out of my mouth. Standing there at the corner was a man. He's basically what you might expect: dirty jeans, a torn jacket, raggedy baseball cap. You've seen hundreds like him, seen them, but probably not noticed them. So I started to drive past him without giving a second thought. I had to get to shul. It was late. I didn't have any time to stop for this guy. As I started to drive past, our eyes met. And it's very hard to explain, but in that moment, I saw fire. Not anger. He wasn't angry, but the fire, like the fire of heaven that you read in Isaiah or in Ezekiel. And it grabbed me, and it literally pulled my soul right out of my body. And it's been 30 years, and I still can feel it. Right now, sitting here, I get shivers. And in that moment, I knew that was Eliyahu HaNavi. Now, at the time, I wasn't a particularly religious person. Sure, it was Yom Kippur, but I didn't keep kosher. I didn't go to shul regularly. I was dating a non-Jewish girl even, but I knew that was Eliyahu, and I knew I was given a test, and I'd failed. And now I don't pass a person asking for money. If I have money, I try to give them something. If I don't, I at least look at them and try to see them, hoping that one day I'll be given another opportunity. And this time I hope I can pass that test. It's a very short story. It's a very true story. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much. That was a great way to start our storytelling evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Now I'd like to introduce Fran Markover. Fran is a longtime member of Congregation Tikkun V'Or, and she has had the pleasure of reading her poems there at the high holiday services. And her poems have been published in many literary journals. Her book, Grandfather's Mandolin, the book of poetry, was a finalist in the Henry Morgenthau III First Poetry Book Prize. So congratulations on that, Fran. And Fran will read and introduce some of her original poetry.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to share 3 poems in honor of my grandparents. The first poem, Why I Plant Sunflowers. Because I'd watch my grandfather lose himself summers among the tall plants. He studied them, a schoolboy memorizing the past, urging seeds, wachsen gesund, grow well. Because I picture him among gold waving faces, lifting me up to the hardiest flower. Franza Nutsky, he'd shout, Shana Madela. As we twirled, my braids swung like thick ropes. Because gardening was his salvation, he left uncut the fullest blooms for siblings whose names he'd buried in unmarked plots. Because I imagine how all the brothers played hide and seek behind sunflowers that lit fields, how the boys severed stems, plucked and cupped seeds, scattered them on a table like gemstones, and the petals, how tightly they held, how soft the letting go. My first synagogue was called Congregation Knesset Israel, and here is the poem that I wrote in honor of that temple. My first synagogue, the simple wooden one, cradled in the Catskills. Its cemetery near the goat farm, where my father asked to be interred for the eternal bleats. It's the temple Morris, my grandfather, founded with other farmers. It's mezuzah, a reminder, welcome. Unbutton one's coat, reveal your faith. And now, there's no one to stand at the bima, open the ark, unroll the Torah. No one left who heard stories of Yitzhak Needleman, the tailor, and Sam, the butcher. No one tastes Ruby's rugula, people who ached for Job and trembled over Jonah's whale are gone. Those who recalled what man hurt his thumb, nailing local pine into floors. There's no more penny socials to win knickknacks called tchotchkes to sustain the care committee. No more gatherings under new moons, chats on how babies heal from croup, how elders get brides to town. We had no rabbi, little talk of God, only neighbors bringing cabbage for neighbors, worshipers believing in moist earth, early roosters, and candles freely lit. The ordinary reaped blessing, Herbie's healthy cow, Sophie's pearls, truckloads of manure for Grandpa's Eden, songs lulling congregants toward refuge. No minion of angels, just tired harvesters leaving plowshares behind, bowing to the source of green pastures, lifting cups of wine. My last poem. I wrote this after cleaning out my grandparents' farm in the Catskills. And when I found all this lace. I don't know if you can see it. Lots of lace in my grandmother's drawer. I wrote this poem. It's called Lace. After her death, I rummaged through her dresser, guilty like an 8-year-old fingering someone else's nightgowns. At the bottom of the drawer, small ovals of black lace. Grandmother wore them to temple. They reminded her of everything old and musty, like her sister Ruckel's yellow-gray hair, of how their mother crocheted fine thread into ebony snowflakes. During prayer, the elderly ladies pinned them onto their perms like mournful flags. Now it's my turn. Hold each lace up to candles. Hold the empty spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fran. That was very beautiful and makes me feel very nostalgic because I spent lots of time in the Catskills, as you well know, and that sense of things passing, never to return. Thank you so much. Okay. I'd like now to introduce Dave Scheiber. Dave is an educator who has served communities in New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Southern Israel. He has taught vocal and instrumental music, English to speakers of other languages, modern Hebrew, and Jewish liturgy. Dave now lives in Lansing with his wife and new baby, and works as a vocal music teacher in Union Springs. And Dave will sing for us tonight, Shir La'ahava.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Last year, for about 11 months, my family and I spent the 11 months living in Israel, based in Eilat. And I spent the time teaching English in 2 of the local schools, and we lived in Eilat, and we got a chance to travel around the country a little bit. It was a little bit challenging in the time of COVID, and actually at the end of our stay there in May, our son was born in Eilat. So as I sing this evening, I've got a photo collage of some photos that were taken during mostly this last trip in 2020, 2021, and also a couple of additional trips in 2016 and then previously in 2012. So I see someone is asking me to turn the volume up. Is this better? So we'll have a photo collage, and this song Shir La'ahava originally was entitled Yachad, with music and words by Liber Tzioni, and as performed by the band Gaia. Yachad lev el lev niftach v'nireh Tahoshem bashamayim yachad lev el lev niftach betikva le'ahava ech shehalev niftach chorek et ha'olam uvikirya gdola nasher le'ahava Imru hakol efshar Selo meuchar Hashachar kvar hala Zman le'ahava Yachad lev el lev Yiftach v'nireh Tahoshem bashamayim Yachad ורקים נעמים ולשום דאווים בדרך העולם, זה שיר לי אהבה. ולב נפתח ונראה את האושר בשמיים יחד, ולב נפתח בתקווה לאהבה ורק אם נעמים ובלי שום דאווים בדרך העולם. יחד לב ולב נפתח ונראה את האושר בשמיים. יחד לב ולב נפתח בתקווה לאהבה, זה שיר לי אהבה.
Wow, thank you so much. You've just taken us across the world. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dave. Okay, now I would like to introduce Aziz Kamel. Aziz and I met in 1997 when we both began to work at the Elizabeth Ann Clune Montessori School. I taught art and Aziz taught phys ed. Aziz was always somewhat of a philosopher coach whose words of encouragement deeply affected his students. He also has worked over the years with individually with children who were preparing for a uniquely styled B'nai Mitzvah. Aziz will now tell us a story that he calls How Much Longer to Wait for Mashiach. Aziz, welcome.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you, everybody. Almost 3,000 years ago, the prophet Isaiah wrote that God would come on earth, the flowers would bloom, love will permeate the world. And the idea of a Messiah, Mashiach, came into being. And Jews for almost 3,000 years have been saying, when? And they opened the door on Seder for Elijah, glass of wine for Elijah, saying that Elijah's presence will presage the Messiah. Not yet, but we're all looking for it outside of ourselves. And there's a congregation upstate New York, like many other congregations, that people come to sit in the pews, say the prayers, look around, see, ooh, is everybody noticing that I'm saying the prayers correctly? Every word I know in Hebrew. Am I singing? Oh, good. So people all feeling in their own world, feeling, oh, I'm doing it right. From my lips to God's ears. All right, and what am I doing tonight? Let's see, do I have plans? So the thought is not being there. It's, I'm doing this, my obligation. God loves it. But there's something missing in the congregation. And I guess it's a sense of community. People look around and see with disdain other congregants who seem somehow incomplete, somehow dishonest, somehow, why am I with these people? This is my congregation, must be a better one somewhere in upstate New York. And they started looking at each other. And Joseph Levy looks at somebody else and he says, oh, that person never mows his lawn. Why is mow his lawn? My value of my house is going down, down, down. What a schnorr. And then somebody looks at that guy, what's his name? Jacob, I don't remember his last name. And he bought a Land Rover. Oh, he wants to be big. He wants to be important. Wants everybody to see that. What about global warming? He's destroying the planet. Oh, and you remember Margaret Levinson? Yeah. 15-year-old kid she has. He smokes marijuana. She says, okay, do what you want. You're on your own. You're 15. and Joey Bach, you know, his 2 kids, 16 years old, have tattoos. It's prescribed in the Bible as a sin. You can't deface your face. So they look around and think, what am I doing here? And there's a darkness that permeates the room. And the rabbi comes in up to the bima, saunters very slowly, looks out of the congregation, and he says something nobody understands. He says, the Messiah is amongst you. What? Everybody looks at each other. What? What did he say? An quizzical look permeates the congregation. Messiah is amongst us. They look around. I don't see him, her, him. And then he started thinking, all right, we'll take his words at face value. The Messiah is amongst us. They started looking around. Ooh, could it be Martha Goldberg? Martha Goldberg? She gives to charity. I know she does. And she doesn't do it just to do her duty and feel important. She does it feeling the pain of the world. And David Cohn, when we go to the supermarket, seems to always let people in front of him. He's a good guy. Maybe it's him. I don't know. And what about Simon Levinson? What about Simon Levinson? He actually came to babysit my kids, and he told them stories that meant something. Didn't just blather, told real stories. One of those could be the Messiah. It could be right here. You know what? Maybe it's me. It could be me. Wow. And everybody started looking at each other differently. And even David Cohn, 15-year-old kid, kind of reserved, shy, got up, started hugging people. And other people started hugging people. And the whole place changed. The whole place changed. It was a community. It was a place where love abounded. The Messiah is amongst us. And as people left the shul, they carried that feeling with them to the gym, to the supermarket, to the gas station, to the movies. And not only did the congregation start to change, the whole city started to change. The whole city started to see themselves and each other as who they really are. Who they really are, with the divinity inside, not looking outside. Oh, over there. No, it's over there. It's right here. It's right here. So I leave you with that thought. The divinity is amongst us. And let's give each one a virtual hug. Can we do that? Thank you.
Aziz, thank you so very, very much. You did it again. Thank you for your message. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I would now like to introduce Madeleine Oakley. We will have an intermission after Madeleine. Can we get Madeleine up on the screen also, Todd? I hope so. Here she is. Madeleine is a member of Temple Beth-El, and she lives downtown right near Fall Creek Elementary School. For a few years, Madeleine led a group of 5th graders at the school in a poetry posse, where they read and wrote poems. And then the poems were printed and distributed in booklets at the end of the year, I guess. Madeleine is going to read us some of her own original poems, and she'll introduce them as she goes. Thank you, Madeleine.
Thank you, Marjorie. I'm going to read 6 unrelated poems, and I won't say much about them, just the title as I go. Recipe for poetry. Make the words sing, make them edible. 3 cups spark to start, 4 hours work, 1/2 cup to keep going, 1 tablespoon magic, 1 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon dreams, 1.5 cups vision. Take out what doesn't belong, even or especially if it's your favorite line. Mix all the rest together. Let it rest overnight. Then set out the words in a pattern so people can see. Bake until done. Winter light. The grayed green field glistens in the frost light. Rime crystals sparkle on the footbridge over the frozen curve of creek. It is utterly still. Too cold, too early even for birds. Too cold to smell the earth's damp. The wintry morning's cold, bright sun, laser-like, shines clear. It gives no heat, only pure light. Who named the trees? In the garden, the Lord God brought to the first person for naming all the beasts and all the birds. And the first person gave them all their names. But who gave names to the trees? There was in the garden the tree of knowledge of good and bad, which was almost certainly not an apple tree. But who named the sycamore, the pomegranate, the pine or blue spruce laden with snow? What of the linden or the copper beech, the tamarisk and the cottonwoods along the riverbanks? We have seen trees by the sea that bend to the wind and do not break, the bristlecone pine and the Joshua tree that flourish amidst harshness, the dignity of trees that grow despite inhospitable soil. We remember the sweetness of olive and fig trees.
Madeleine, you got muted suddenly.
When we stumble in the wood and lose our way, we are grateful for the sturdiness of oak and locust, for the tree of life we grasp, for the chinaberry tree, for the unnamed namer of the trees. Aspects of light. We've gone all over this ground before. We've made this journey many times. These are all the aspects of light. Red, purple, blue, yellow, raspberry. Red, blue, purple, raspberry, yellow. The great blue heron emerging from the reeds in the mist. The organizing principle of pain or loss or love. The 2 edges of night. How we wait watching under sea grape trees. How when you walk by a patch of poison ivy, you start to burn under the skin. There is no visible trace, but the body remembers. I want you to keep this always in your mind. Pay attention. You never know where your next lesson will come from or who will teach it. The ghosts are real, no matter what we tell the children. When your muse leaves town, how will she, is she, travel? Flying through clouds, I suppose, rather than by bus or car or train. On a bike? Did she leave you anything to work with? Piles of crumpled paper thrown on the floor quickly grow. Many trips to the kitchen, snack upon snack, as if feeding your stomach will feed your head as well. Try something else. Take a walk, breathe, listen to music, even watch TV. It doesn't matter. Nothing helps. Stare out the window. Let the dogs out. Maybe they can bring you back an idea. Has the mail come? How many times do you check? Ah, the newspaper. Can you pluck out a positive tidbit, something to expand on among the truly horrible that covers the pages? Meditate on the clock's ticking, perhaps, on the natural sounds outdoors, on the children on the playground across the street. A beer, more coffee? Is it raining? That would suit your mood. When is she coming back? Is she ever coming back? What did you do that made her leave? If you watch for her, will it speed her return or only delay it? Like waiting for a pot of water to come to a boil. Maybe the phone will ring, though if you were in fact writing, you wouldn't answer it. A prayerful plea? Nothing. Waiting on the wind. I like to say I'm not old. I don't feel old, but there are the lost edges, the blue veins that have popped up on my hands and forearms, my now misshapen feet. Yet those feet take me down the gorge trail and up along the rim. My damaged knees and shoulders let me work the backyard and the garden. My little dog follows me everywhere, no matter her previous unknowable life. We sit or lie in the sun and the quiet, the trees barely murmuring, the earliest ones slightly turning, the clouds unmoving against the blue. I collect poems and pictures, listen to the crickets and the cicadas, watch the birds that come to the feeder, the bright dark eye of the tufted titmouse, and love my life.
Madeleine, thank you so very much. That was really beautiful. Thank you. We're going to take a very quick intermission. I had said 8 minutes to the presenters, but I'm going to cut it to 5. So I don't want to lose anyone. So please hang on, go get yourself a drink, a cookie or something, and be back in 5 minutes, which will be 8:10 sounds good. No, that's only 3 minutes. Anyhow, 5 minutes. See you soon. Thank you again for attending. The first person for this half will be Marnie Camp. And Marnie is a well-known member of Congregation Tikkun V'Or, especially because of her beautiful voice and her willingness to share it with all those in the congregation. In the greater Ithaca community, she is known as Dr. Marnie O'Shea of Integrative Family Medicine. She will be singing the song Im Telech and telling us something about its composer. So take it away, Marnie. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for having me here and for being here tonight. This is just a wonderful evening. This song I learned 2 or 3 years ago. I think it just popped up in my YouTube suggestion, and I listened to it once and immediately fell in love with it. It is written by Idan Rachel, who is a very well-known, perhaps the best-known Israeli composer, lyricist, keyboardist. When he was born in 1977 in Israel to Eastern European family. And by the time he was 20, he had explored music thoroughly. He started on the accordion, which he said was the uncoolest instrument ever. But he went on to study keyboard, jazz, improvisation. By the time he was in his late teens, early 20s, he was backing up some of the most famous artists as a studio musician. And then he launched a project called the Idan Rachel Project, where he brought together about 30 different musicians, mostly of Ethiopian and background, and he had a love of gypsy music, and he had become very proficient, as that age group is, at technology and keyboard and all the different sounds that you can make. So he created a sound that was very unique, very new, and he rocketed to fame with this Idan Rachel project. And this song, Im Telech, which he translates as "If You Go," was #1 in Israel in 2003. For the whole year, it was the #1 song. This song really spoke to me around the time of Yizkor. It's a song of longing. It's a song of missing someone that you love. It's a song of waiting for someone to come back. I wrote an English translation to it, so I'll sing both his Hebrew words and my English translation. And I translate it as, "If you leave me." אם תלך מי יחבק אותי ככה, מי ישמע אותי בסוף היום, מי ינחם וירגיע, רק אתה יודע. ואם תלך למי יחכה בחלום, בשמלה שלה שיגיע, יחבק אותי ככה, כמו שאתה מגיע. If you leave me, who will hold me this way? Who will listen to me at the end of the day? Who will comfort and calm me as only you know how? And if you leave me, who will I wait for? By the window in my best dress, waiting for you to hold me when you come home. שתלך לשמש תצא בשדה המוזר, בוקר בערב יחש להאיר פניי תאמר, כל היום רק עליך, שתבוא תישא אותי בשתי ידיך, משדה לנחל תרחוץ את פניי ותגיד לי מילים כמו שרק אתה יודע. When you leave, I'll go out to the sun-kissed fields. Morning and evening, the moonbeams will shine on my face as I dream only of you. When you come back, you'll pick me up in your arms, carry me to the river, wash my tears away, and tell me you love me as only you know how. אם תלך מי יחבק אותי ככה, מי ישמע אותי בסוף היום, מי ינחם וירגיע, רק אתה יודע. אם תלך למי בחלום, בשמלה שיגיע, יחבק אותי ככה, כמו שאתה מגיע. Waiting for you to hold me when you come home.
Thank you so much, Martin. That was very beautiful. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Lise Rosenfield. Lise grew up in Geneva, Switzerland, and she came to the US as a graduate student at SUNY Buffalo. So Todd, are we going to see Lise on the screen? There she is. Okay, she met her husband, Richard Rosenfield, as a student. They were married in 1971 and had 2 children. And they both became interested in Judaism. So Lise converted and Richard studied and became a cantor. So for 15 years, Richard was religious leader at Temple Beth-El in Geneva, New York, while Lise was a molecular biologist at the experiment station. They retired in 2010 and moved to Ithaca, where they are now members of both Temple Beth-El and Congregation Tikkun Torah. Lise will tell a family story entitled The Diplomat Bath Mat, Stories About My Mother-in-Law, Part 1. Thank you, Lise.
My mother-in-law, Olive Levy Rosenfield, was a wonderful woman. I called her mother. She was the opposite of what I am. Mother was petite, vivacious, always talking. Mother was born in the West Indies, so she spoke the Queen's English with a delicious Caribbean accent. She had met my father-in-law in the beginning of World War II, when he was an American medic stationed in Jamaica. She left her beloved Jamaica in 1944, all by herself, to go marry him in Pittsburgh. So she knew how difficult it is to leave your country and your family behind, and she tried to help me. Mother was very generous, and she loved shopping. She took me once to one of her favorite stores to get me some nice clothes. But I was a young, self-conscious Swiss girl, and in Filene's basement, I had to try the clothes in the communal fitting room. One large room filled with women in various states of undress. That memory still makes me shiver. Things got easier years later when we moved to Texas. Mother would send us huge boxes of clothes for our children. The clothes were not always our taste, but it was a big help for me who had so little time. My mother, please.
It's in the way of your face.
I know, sorry. My husband, I call him Dick, would always laugh and say, "See, when I was a child, the socks Mother would buy for me were always marked irregular. Now I graduated to selected imperfects." We spent a year in Israel in the beginning of Dick's cantorial studies, and when we returned to the US, my parents-in-law welcomed us in their large house in Riverdale, and we lived with them while Dick was studying at Hebrew Union College. But I remember a friend of mine shaking her head and saying, no house would be big enough for my mother-in-law and me. It took me 2 years to accept that my friend had been right, and we moved into an apartment close by. Things calmed down, and we often visited Mother and Dad. One day, Mother said, "I have something for you," and she handed me a thick, high-quality white bath mat. It had Diplomat woven into the fabric in capital letters. I said, "Mother, I can't accept that. It was taken from a hotel." She laughed. "It comes from Pittsburgh. They always took things from hotels." So I shrugged and took the bath mat. At the time, We only had one bathroom. It already had a bath mat, so the Diplomat bath mat stayed in the back of our closet for almost 30 years. In 2010, Dick and I retired. We moved to Ithaca into a house that had 2 bathrooms. So I decided to use the Diplomat bath mat in the guest bathroom. Then I wondered, what was that Diplomat hotel and where was it? I Googled it and found out. I'm going to show you what I found out. Oh, can you,
That's right.
now can you remove this?
No. Here you
I don't know, okay.
go. Okay.
I should have called it the original Diplomat Hotel.
Okay.
It was a temporary residence for many American celebrities. Many entertainers performed there, like Lawrence Welk and Jackie Gleason, and TV shows like Hollywood Squares were filmed there. This is 2 postcards that show the hotel. But it fell into disrepair. It was shuttered in 1991 and demolished in 1998. I read somewhere it took less than 1 minute to implode. Online nowadays, you can see the detailed history of the original Diplomat Hotel and buy vintage objects showing the Diplomat logo, postcards like the ones I just showed, or ashtrays, glasses like these 2, or even little books of matches, stationery, even dinner plates. And their logo matches the one on our bath mat. This is our bath mat. The hotel was rebuilt starting in 2000, and it is now a huge complex called the Diplomat Beach Resort in Hollywood. It has a country club, a spa, and a 36-story hotel. The hotel closed for 14 months during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was reopened in June 2021.
No. Stop.
Okay,
Just say
okay. Huh? Where? I'm not sharing my screen anymore.
That's right. Oh, you still want to?
No.
No. Okay.
Oh,
We can see you, Lise.
Just-
Carry on.
oh, okay. That's all right. So now I knew now I knew the hotel where the Pittsburgh Rosenfields had picked up the bath mat was the original Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. A hotel famous enough to have its name woven into bath mats. I shared that information with Dick, and he said, "Wait a minute. In the early 1960s, my grandparents did not have enough money to afford a hotel like that. It must have been my parents who would have gone there for a medical conference." We will never know who took the bath mat, but it was worth finding out where it came from. Now I'll show you, hope you can focus. This is the Diplomat bath mat. I think I'm going to make a story in a photo book for my grandchildren using the text and the photographs.
Thank you so much, Lise. That was fun to listen to. That was lovely. Thank you. Hey, the next presenter is my husband, Lenny Rosenfield, the same last name as Lise, but we know that we're not related. We're not from related families. Lenny is a longtime member of Temple Beth-El. He arrived here in Ithaca with the rest of his family in 1991, and he's retired from the electrician's job that brought him to Ithaca, but he is still actively on call as a general fix-it man for jobs large and small. So this story will give you a good idea of his lifestyle. It's called Trying to Get to Minion on Time. I'm going to move out of the way. He's going to take my place. It'll take 1 second.
Thank you. So it was a cold and dreary Sunday morning in late winter a few years back. I attend the morning minions when we were in person, and now it's on Zoom. But my plan was to take Marjorie's car to what used to be Cost Tires, now Mr. Tire, on Elmira Road in Ithaca, and then bike to the Minion, which is about 2 miles away at Temple Beth-El. So I got up extra early. I did my exercises. I got dressed in my biking clothes, had breakfast, and prepared to leave for downtown to get her car to the inspection station on time, and then bike over to Temple Beth-El. I took the bike out of the garage, loaded it into the car, and drove very briskly downtown. And it was a pleasure with no traffic at all to get to Mr. Tire, Cost Tire quickly. I even remembered to bring a pen in case they didn't have a pen in the night drop box to drop off the keys for the car. I proceeded to fill out the form, my telephone number, and slide the keys into the envelope, make sure it slides back down into the slot, open the back of Marjorie's car, and to my great surprise, realized that the bike was still sitting in the driveway. Senior moment number one. What am I going to do now? I'm very good at bike riding. I can do 10, 20, 30, 40 miles on a bike, but I can't run to the corner. Well, I'm going to have to run. I was not dressed for running. I had a ski jacket on over my biking clothes and with a knapsack with my tefillin and talis in it. This was not going to work out well. Time was ticking and 9 o'clock was quickly approaching. Started running down Elmira Road. My father always said, take angle streets and that will shorten the distance to where you're going. So I'm going to take Elmira Road all the way up. And running, I see in front of me a savior, a Lime bike. All I have to do is get on the Lime bike and ride to Temple Beth-El. First, you have to download the UPC code, enter your credit card information, and you take off. How am I going to do this? I don't know what to do. And now it's 5:30 in LA. My daughter is going to be sleeping and she'll never be able to help me get through this technical difficulties I'm going to have. So I started running, and I run and walk and I'm out of breath and I'm sweating, and I'm up Elmira Road to Albany Street and down Albany Street to Court Street, turn right a few more blocks, and I make it to Temple Beth-El with just a minute or two to spare before Minion. I walk in and everybody first says, "Where's your bike?" I'll tell you later about that. I make arrangements for someone to drive me back all is well. I put on my tallis and my tefillin, and I realized that there's something else wrong with this picture. And I slowly looked down and realized, senior moment number 2, I left my biking pants at home, and I'm sitting there in my fortunate black long johns with no pants on. And I look around very carefully and realize that nobody realizes that I don't have my pants on. And I cover my legs with my tallis, and we prepare the morning service. And I'm in a cold sweat. After my hot sweat, I'm in a cold sweat. Service is finished. Everybody packs up, and my ride takes me back to Cost Tire, and nobody realized that I had no pants on. And as some of you older folks will remember, a gentleman named Paul Harvey, who was a radio commentator, what he used to say is, and now you know the rest of the story. Thank you. And if you see me, ask me if I have my pants on.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we're going to go now to Pamela Wax. I actually was a little bit out of order, and I apologize to Pamela for that. Pamela is a rabbi. She's a pastoral counselor and a teacher whose essays on Judaism, spirituality, and women's issues have been widely published, as have her poems. Her first book of poetry, Walking the Labyrinth, is due to be published in March. Pam lives in the Berkshires. Her connection to Ithaca dates from 2005 through 2008, when she served as High Holiday Rabbi at Congregation Tikkun V'Or. Pam will read to us from her original poetry. Thank you, Pam.
Well, I figured you put me out of order, Marjorie, because my poem, Morning Minion, follows from Lenny's wonderful story. Morning Minion, with a play on the word morning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. Praise to the women and the men who get up early to praise God, not from the warmth of bed or sipping coffee at the kitchen table, while eyeing the red-winged blackbirds feeding in the backyard, but by schlepping to synagogue because a minyan of 10 is required for some prayers to be raised. Praise to those who come through rain or snow, or when they feel under the weather, or even though they don't believe in a God who hears prayer. Perhaps they come because the sacred is whomever they sit next to. They know the man who has lost his wife and want him to know he has not lost everything. The mother whose son OD'd gets out of bed every morning, and so will they. They know the woman whose father died 12 years ago on this Hebrew date. She'll be there. After she recites the mourner's Kaddish, she will share a glimpse of the man she remembers. Tell us something about your father, your spouse, your brother, your daughter. Every day they hear vignettes, yarns of regret, epics of exile and migration. Praise to those who come back to stand witness to grief, to hold the space for the sake of those who remember their dead. Praise to those who accompany me as I sit in the corner, wadding tissues and hallowed prayers that tether me to a now hollower world. A set table, a daily time, place, litany, with a changing cast who escort me through the gauntlet, deserves praise. I pound my chest at the words I sinned and I transgressed, remorse bruising my skin. And when I give thanks for my loved ones, I still list my brother among them, though he left on purpose, untethered to God or to man. My second poem is called Jewish Geography. My mother never taught me bridge, though she was a master. The game I mastered was imbibed with her milk and carried on her breath. Anyone who's Jewish, and that's most everyone I know, plays it. You meet someone at a simcha, you ask where they're from, and when they say Austin or Boise or Cleveland, you say something like, "Do you know Susie Gantz, a chiropractor in Shaker Heights? Her ex, he once won big on Jeopardy. He was my cousin Mike's college roommate." In my 20s, I lived on an Iris Lane in California with a new friend whose mother, ask her if she's related to the Wax family from Montclair, New Jersey, had grown up with my father and his siblings. It turns out the candlesticks we never lit on Friday nights had been a wedding gift from her grandma Belle to my parents. At my wedding, my old friend Alana plotzed when she saw my husband's old friend Steve, her first cousin. Who knew? Our mutual friend Atara from the Bronx recognized my husband's old friend Yochai from Brooklyn, to whom she'd sold her car in a previous incarnation. These things happen, my husband said, when I asserted on our first night as a married couple that these were signs, binding worlds of past and present, double blessing our union from above. Babe, they're not even small m miracles. I looked pityingly at my beshert for his paucity of imagination and quoted Einstein. Coincidences, my dear, are God's way of staying anonymous. And so it goes, whether it's Susie or Jack, a teacher or a dentist, an old buddy or kin. You never know where the invisible threads of connection will travel. Sometimes they don't say Memphis, New York, or Orlando. They tell you their people are from Minsk, Dnepropetrovsk, or Warsaw, places haunted by dislocated souls and unmarked graves. You compare notes on pogroms and camps, Odessa, Lvov, Treblinka, Ravensbrück. Who was where when? Your father's great aunt Leah, their grandpa Moish, your mother's cousin Pesha once removed, the history you gleaned from eavesdropping, and the history you yourself disinterred as a detective in foreign archives. And when there's a winner, ding, 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 those 2 degrees of separation require letting Susie, Mike, and even the ex know about this serendipitous encounter. You don't need to contact the dead. They already know you are playing the game without them. Even some non-Jews play it. You live in Denver, they live in Denver, and when they come back from visiting their daughter in Tucson, they might say, "We went to the JCC, the best pool around, and there was this lovely couple, last name Goldberg. Do you know them?" It happens, really. And you do. Of course you do. Because even when you don't, the Jewish answer is yes, I know them. We met at Sinai. And I'll read just one short one called Ode to Horseradish. I search for you in the produce aisle at Stop and Shop each year before Pesach. You are always long and gnarly, a rooty rump, fresh from the soil, more than a girl like me would need for show on the Seder plate and my obligatory bite of bitters. So I chop you up, give chunks away to those who thought you came naturally magenta, steeped in vinegar and beets from a jar. When they meet the real you, unvarnished, tears are running down their cheeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you for joining us. That was wonderful. And it's great that we can do this with people from afar too. Thank you. Okay, our last presenter of the evening is Ryan Zowell. Ryan is the music director at Elizabeth Ann Clune Montessori School, and I met him there as well. And he also directs the Cornell University Klezmer Ensemble. So he's a professional trombonist and tuba player, and he's performed with many bands, orchestras, and musicians. Ryan has made appearances at Temple Beth-El on quite a few occasions over the years. And tonight he will close our entertainment with a mix of story and music entitled The Longest Day. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Marjorie, and hello, everybody. It's been a real pleasure to be part of this community event with you. So my story is called The Longest Day, and it started on my birthday in 2018, December 30th. It was my last full day in Israel, where I was attending my nephew's bar mitzvah with my 3 kids and my wife. And it was my 3 kids' first trip there, and it was also there with a couple of cousins of mine. So what I wanted to do for my birthday was, after having gone a couple of times to Jerusalem in previous visits, I wanted to give my tour of Jerusalem to my family. I thought I could do it. So we were in Tel Aviv, we loaded up a couple of cars, and everyone followed me. We parked right in the parking spot by the wall where I wanted to. I took them up on the ramparts. It was a Sunday, so as we walked around the Armenian quarter, it was very quiet, lots of bells ringing, but not a lot of people. They were indoors, and as we rounded the far side of the wall toward the Arab quarter, where we could see the dome of the mosque across the old city, we then descended in from the ramparts, and we had an incredible meal. And then shortly thereafter, we walked the Stations of the Cross, and the anticipation of approaching the Jewish quarter was growing. And as we walked through the souk, where I bought this great backgammon table, which I would be happy to use with any of you on the other side at any time, and where I also bought this shofar, which I blew in order so my family would know where to find me in the old city. We slowly then after approached the Jewish quarter, and I had my son Daniel next to me, and I said, "Daniel, we're gonna run into somebody we know. I just feel it right now." Maybe it was what Pam was just talking about our connection from Sinai. I just knew somebody was there. We were going to run into it. Well, as we walked to the Kotel, to the Wailing Wall, the sky started to darken. It was dusk at this point, and it started to rain. But we finally were laying eyes on this site that I've wanted my kids and my wife and my cousins to see. And we walked, men to the left, women's to the right, much to my wife's chagrin. And we walked, I had my son, my older son next to me, and my very young son on my shoulders, and we walked to the wall, and we put our hands on the wall, and we said our prayers, and we put our notes into the wall, and the rain really started to fall down, and I felt like this was quite an epic scene altogether. I can't believe we're here. We've come all the way around the world. And I turn around, and I, with my back to the wall, I look out upon a sea of black hats, and the rain is falling, and I'm looking just ahead of me, and I lock eyes with one of these black-hatted men, like I'm locking eyes with you. And we look at each other, and he says to me, "Ryan?" And I said, "Ellie?" And it was Ellie Silberstein from Ithaca, New York, the rabbi up at Chabad, who of course would be at the Wailing Wall at exactly that moment. Well, he said, "What are you doing here?" And I gave him the whole spiel that I just gave you. And he said, "Well, come with me. And he grabs me by the arm, and I grab my son by the arm, and my other son's on my shoulders, and we're going towards, and he's walking me to the wall. And wouldn't you know it, Ellie is a macha at the Wailing Wall. We get under the little tent next to the wall, and all the other rabbis there, they say, "Ellie, hello," and we all go under. And he says to my son, who was 13 at the time, he said, "Have you been bar mitzvahed?" And well, Aziz, who is here, knows very well that Daniel had been bar mitzvahed because Aziz bar mitzvahed him right here in the South Hill Swamp behind my house with my family. And I'm thinking, well, I don't think, Ellie, it's your understanding of what a bar mitzvah is, but you could be sure Daniel's bar mitzvahed. And before you know it, Ellie and his friends start rapping to fill in on us, what they might do to some young unsuspecting Jews at the Wailing Wall. And he yells, "Repeat after me," and we repeat after him, and the rain is coming down, and it's so cinematic. And we have this occasion. My Lord knows what my son on my shoulders is thinking while this is all going on. But as Ellie says to me, he says, "I can't believe you're here on such a day, and I get to do this mitzvah for you." And my cousin says, "And it's on his birthday." And all the rebbes under the tent say, "And it's his birthday!" And it's a birthday. So we have that incredible lightning fast interaction. The rain starts to pour. We run through the old city back to our car. My son on my shoulders is laughing because he could see the water splashing in the ancient gutter system that goes through the floor of the old city. There's water rushing through. We get in the car, we drive, and we call my parents who are at the hotel in Tel Aviv, and we said, "We're coming, we want, get the falafel, get all this. We have incredible stories to tell you." So we get all the way to Tel Aviv. Now, this was my last full day. I know I'm leaving in the morning, so this is going to be the last meal. We have a great dinner with all my cousins, and there's like 20 of us over there. And as the evening's drawing to a close, I'm there with my mother and my father, and I'm listening to some music. And my father, who is a musician, I put on some music for him to listen to, and he listens to the music, and he immediately goes into a giant seizure right there in my arms. This is about midnight, and I'm holding him. He had small ones before them, but not something like this. And it's this incredibly intense moment. It's my mother and it's my father and me, and there's this emergency, and he ultimately comes to, he's taken to the hospital, and although he passed away just 2 months after that, that is actually not the end of the story. Because you must remember, the next morning I had a flight home. So I called my brother from the hospital who lives in Renana, and he comes and covers me. I get back to the hotel that I was staying in at about 4 a.m. And I'm there with my wife. We stay up. We leave a couple of hours later to catch our flight, middle of winter. Remember, now it's December 31st we arrive in Toronto. We drive through a snowstorm on December 31st from Toronto to Syracuse. Pretty good weather system we ran into, and we knock on my in-laws' door in Syracuse, New York at 11:59 on December 31st, and they open the door, and we count 10, 9, all the way down to 1, Happy New Year, and I go to bed, and that was my longest day. And so it was certainly, the story for me is wrapped in Jewishness. It took place in Israel mostly, and it's my family, which of course is the predominant source of my Jewish education, but also my music education. And so, as Marjorie mentioned, my eyes have been open to a lot of Jewish music over the past few years, right here in Ithaca, and especially from a friend of ours named Joel Rubin. And my son is the big one who wasn't on my shoulders then. The one who's next to me, this is Daniel right here. He's going to join me right now. We're going to play a song that is an old world Hasidic piece of Tish Nigunim, table music that the fiddler would play for extra tips at the wedding. No tips necessary, and it's going to be on the trombone. Thanks a lot for hearing our story, and we're just going to play a short tune and kick it back to Marjorie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ryan. I had no idea about that story. That's really great. Thank you. And I would like to thank you and all the presenters. I'd also again like to thank Todd Olson for being our technician and Adina Brown, the secretary at Temple Beth-El, for helping to pull this entire thing together. Thank you to all of the attendees, near and far. It's wonderful that you were here, and it made it a joyful experience that you were here to enjoy this evening with everyone. So I'm going to bid you good night. We cut off right at an hour and a half. That's good timing. And hope to see you in person next year. Okay, good night.